In today's video, we are having a look at the things that I hate inside this vivarium. This is my giant rainforest ecosystem for my Darwin carpet python. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things that I love here, but there's also a lot of things that can be improved upon. So, let's get into it. So, first on the list, and this is my most major thing, is compared to some of my other enclosures, I would like this to be more heavily planted. Some of the plants are really thriving, others not so much, and I would like that to change so this looks more lush and naturalistic and fits the room a bit better. So, a couple of ideas on how to achieve this. This spot down here, I'm thinking of having a cut-in plant box and a moss wall that goes the full height of this, so plants can grow up and across. I have some ideas on how to achieve that, which will be in a future video. Next one I'm thinking, because I hate this section here, it just looks very bare. I did have moss pressed into there, but obviously that's not going to survive. So I'm thinking of a plant box with some holes so plants can grow and hang down, and then the misting system run a dripper into that wet sphagnum moss. So it's essentially going to be a horizontal moss pole which allows plants to grow down. This spot here, I like it in theory. It builds up water when the misting goes off, which gives the opportunity for drinking and soaking. Obviously, my little filter that is in line with my misting system is not getting rid of enough of the hard water. So this here needs to change as well. And I'm actually thinking of possibly turning this into some kind of a planter as well, with maybe some ficus creeping fig, so that can spread. He does sit there, but creeping fig seems to handle getting squashed quite well, so that is another idea for that spot. These divides in between the rockwork, I think I would like to put some more ferns, fill that out more so it looks a bit more full and lush. This side being under the basking zone, I might just replace the moss and possibly put some ferns coming out the side of the tree trunk. Obviously, the other thing that I need to improve on is wire management, because he keeps on dragging them down no matter what I do. So that is another thing on the list of things that I would like to improve. Next on the agenda is the ground level, and the biggest issue here is the light is not powerful enough to keep plants alive down here. So we have a few plants that we've put in that seem to do all right without too much light. This is a cast iron plant that's a little worse for wear, but that actually prefers less light. So fingers crossed that there will survive. In our pond section, we've planted some alocasia that is commonly known as elephant ear and gets very big. And as you can see, it is doing quite well. So hopefully that will fill in this spot, maybe pop up into this section. The lucky bamboo doing very well. That doesn't need much light either. So we are successfully getting some stuff to survive. The green dragon coming up here and is shooting out new growth, which is good because that was looking a bit rough for a while. This section here, not happy with this at all. It's really hard to find that natural messiness and still have it look nice and presentable. This here, big issue. I really want to balance out the enclosure of plants here, but nothing seems to survive. I put some palms in here and they just died off. I'm not sure if it's because it was too wet there or if it was just the light, but I have a plan for that as well. So I've got another one of these which survived really well. Put it here, but I just want to make sure this isn't waterlogged or anything first. And then this log here, I've got a very exciting idea that I want to get done today as well. I want to fill all this bit here up with substrate. Ignore the shed, our big boy's down here. He shed the other night. And I want to fill this up with creeping plants and carpeting plants that will hopefully grow down and hang and fill that in as well. So today I think we will just address this spot and this here because I've already got the plants and I don't want them to be sitting in pots and potentially die and just be a waste of money. So okay, so I've cleaned out this section down here. The good news is the soil doesn't seem crazy wet or anything like that, so I think that it must have just been a light issue with the ladyfinger palms, which is a bit disappointing because they're a pretty cool plant, but we know these guys work, so being that I've got some, we're going to chuck them in here. And for now, until I can work out a better plan as far as plants go, I think the answer with a large enclosure is you have to put established plants in. They've got to be tall enough to get that light, otherwise they will not thrive. They're just not strong enough, not robust enough to be in low light. So let's get that one planted. Okay, so we've got these planted now. They are nice and tall and should get enough adequate light. This guy here was a little bit shorter, so I planted him off to the side where he's not getting shadowed by the other plants. We had this little guy down here. Now, I actually thought this fern, I think it's called a crocodile skin fern, I thought that was dying, but when I dug it out, it actually was starting to shoot out new growth. So we'll put it back in and see if it survives. But that's already looking way better. So next up, and I've already started with the substrate, we're going to plant the top of this log with stuff that doesn't mind getting sat on because he does like to bask there, perch there, hunt from that location. So got to be hardy stuff. That is a big key to planting live plants in an enclosure with a big animal. It has to be able to take a beating, or it has to be mature enough that it's too big to take a beating. All right, so let's get into this bit. Okay, there's a closer look at that. This bit looks a bit scraggly, but we'll see. The idea is that's going to hang, which is why I put it at the highest point. I don't want it to instantly be hitting the ground. And there's the moss. So fingers crossed. These plants are very, very nice. Loving that. All right, so the next issue that I want to address is this here. So this is the glass from the enclosure, which I've removed, so it's easy to work and film. That is 6.3 millimeter laminated glass, which is extremely heavy. Now, I knew it was going to be heavy when I had it built, and I thought that I would just put up with it, but being that eventually I would like to have this as multi-species enclosure, the fact that I can't close these fully is an issue because I need to be able to get my fingers in to push it. So we're going to be replacing, and I'm going to have to vacuum these out, these tracks with ball bearing tracks. The problem is the ball bearing tracks are a bit wider than what these are, so I'm going to have to put a block in here, which is probably going to clash somewhere here, maybe, but we'll deal with that. Now, the other reason that I want to do this is I built this rock wall really close to where the glass is, and the glass hits it. There's a few scratches, and it annoys me, but more concerning than that is I have seen our big guy in the middle of the night squeeze up between the glass and this, which is not very wide, and it doesn't look comfortable, but I've seen him do it multiple times. So this is something that I want to fix. Thing with the ball bearing tracks, I shouldn't need to adjust this at all, but for future, I'm not going to build this as close to the glass because I've seen them get stuck down in this spot, which is why I filled it up with artificial ferns. There's a piece of the rock work there that he has also jammed himself into, and it was quite concerning because he looked rather stuck, and I did have to remove the glass to get him out. So even after 26 years of keeping, we still make mistakes and we still need to keep learning and improving, especially if you want to do what I'm doing and try and push the limits on what we can do inside a box full of nature. So this, I'm thinking, when I do the box, the planter box, I'm thinking I'm going to cut this back so there's more space, so when he does crawl up there, because he will keep doing it, there's nothing you can do about that. There's more space there and he's not going to hurt himself. So that's another issue I want to fix. So quick overview that I want to do, we've planted it up a bit more. I want to do the live wall and the planter box. I want to do the hanging planter box up the top. These lights are very glary. I want to do a planter box up here, obviously. Cable management. Fix this. But it just goes to show there's always improvements that can be made. Might put some ferns coming out the side of that tree as well, just to blend that a bit better and create a bit of a divide. But all in all, I think she's starting to come together. Always something that we can improve on, always something we can work towards. So it will be an ongoing journey that I will share with you guys along the way. But the aim is to get this matching this, matching that. And this one is the next one that's going to be replaced because this gap here annoys me. And then we can add to the top of that one as well. But let's have a look at some of the other enclosures so you can see what's working, what's not. And we can have a talk about why as well. On second thought, real quick before we do that, let's get everything watered in. This is an important part that I haven't spoken about before with live planted stuff, is when you plant fresh plants, we need to water them in. Now, when you're using an automatic misting system, it's important to pay attention to where the drips are actually going. This mist, you're not going to get everything. There's our big boy, he's going into his cave down there. You're not going to get everything equally wet. Now, if you look here, this log here gets wet. That then drips down onto other areas. So it's important that we make sure that we're getting drips coming down. Now, this being on an angle, we should be able to get dripping come down at the top of that, which will then help water everything. So here's a good example here. It's kind of hard to show. We're getting dripping here, which you can see now that's off this branch. That's dripping down and landing down here. So that is going to keep the soil around this moist enough. Checking your soil moisture levels, I'm sure there is a bit of a science to it, but I just go by feel. You don't want it wet, but you don't want it dry. And when I dug these out, it was moist enough that I know that they will survive. It matched what these guys are sitting in. So we know we're safe there. Up here, this misting nozzle here sprays onto here, which drips down and feeds these plants here. You can see that there. This is a really, really good way to increase your chance of keeping your plants alive. Using the dripping, so the water will obviously run off of this, down into the bottom of this, keeping that moisture at an appropriate level to keep these plants alive. And I do this in all of my enclosures. Now, you don't do it with every single plant, obviously, but if you have plants such as club moss, such as creeping fig, that need to have your moisture levels at a nice level, then you need to pay attention to these drips, because that's what's going to keep them moist enough that they don't just die. Because people seem to think that creeping fig is just going to take over your whole enclosure. Not if it's not wet enough. It dies super duper fast, which is a real bummer because it's a really cool plant, and I kind of want it to take over. So now that these are getting watered in, now we'll go and have a look at some other enclosures, and you will see what I mean about things not getting watered enough and not staying moist enough. Okay, so we're over at Mazakin's jungle build, the Lost Temple, which you can see the build video for on the channel. But here is a good example. This plant looked really good here, and I loved it growing out from behind this tree stump, but there was not enough moisture there. Now, I was trying to play around with where the moisture was landing and the supports let go, so I need to fix that. But it's a really good example. I probably will end up replacing this with a 2 nozzle and have one pointed at this wall so it drips down into this spot a bit more. But let's have a look at the other plants because they seem to be doing quite well. We've got the Benjamina, always does well in there. The Cascade Palm looks a little bit rough, but not too bad. The cast iron plants haven't died, but the one I am most excited about is this. So we planted jasmine in this enclosure to see how it would go. And to say that it has taken off would be a bit of an understatement, which is exactly what I wanted. I want this to have a real overgrown jungle vibe. Now where it's got a bit close to the lights, it's died back. But definitely surviving, definitely thriving, and definitely something that I'm going to play around with more, because to achieve that overgrown jungle look, plants like this that just go crazy are kind of key. Ground level plants are doing alright. I've got the pond turned off at the minute because I need to do a bit of electrical rearrangement, but all in all, doing really, really well. Here at our Tide Jungle Vivarium, this is our latest one and it is doing really well. The bamboo palms still taking a bit of time to fill in, but there's a couple of new growth points. Unfortunately, the rabbit's foot fern doesn't seem to be doing too good. But this guy, which is called a table fern, is doing really, really well and actually putting out new growth. So really happy about that, and I quite like it. It looks very jungly. So I think I'll definitely be using that more in the future. We've got new growth left, right, and center. New growth here. And even back here, there is, we can't really see it, there it is. The dragon tail. So it's all doing quite well. Unfortunately, and this is kind of heartbreaking because I loved seeing her in here, our little grass mantis has disappeared. So I don't know if she has escaped when I was filming, because obviously I filmed with the glass off. I had noticed her escape once before, but I don't think that's the case. I think that other than the few times that I fed her directly, I'm suspicious of the fact that she wasn't able to catch food, despite the fact that I put 2 boxes of crickets in here of a variety of different sizes, so there's plenty of food to be had. Which, yeah, I'm gutted because it was really, really cool seeing her in here. And I would like to get another one, but I don't want the same thing to happen, so I need to have a think about what I'm going to do as far as establishing food for a little mini predator to eat, because I'm thinking that because she spent a lot of her time up higher, maybe the crickets were just not where she was situating herself, or maybe that she was captive bred and had been raised in a smaller environment. She was always able to find food, whereas in here, and she moved around a lot. Like I found her from this spot, up the back, down on these. I fed her a little moth down here. So yeah, I'm bummed out about this, but it's all part of it, I guess. And we will get another one for this, but yeah, like I said, I don't want the same thing to happen. So for me to get another one in here, I need to work out a better way of making sure they can find food. So that's that one. I put some of that weed that we have in one of the other enclosures in here, and it started sending out shoots, which is cool because that'll create even more foliage. But all in all, it's doing pretty good. My prototype fan, it works, but I don't like how big it is. So I'm thinking I might get a smaller fan to reduce this size down, so the way it affects the glass overlap is less severe. But all in all, this enclosure is going good. The moss is actually surviving, which is interesting. I've seen a heap of insect life, from spiders to the roaches to the millipedes and all sorts going on in here, which is really, really cool to see. I just wish our little grass mantis had thrived a bit more in here. But let's have a look at another enclosure, and this one is one that doesn't have the automatic misting system. So now we are at Odin's little jungle, and as you can see, the ground level plants are not looking so good, which is entirely my fault. The misting system that we set up, look, it was a bit of an experiment and it just didn't have the spread that I wanted. I tried putting it higher and it was hitting the bulb and exploded a bulb, which almost resulted in me getting electrocuted. So obviously not ideal. And then, due to how busy my life and work schedule is, I haven't kept up with manually misting these, which is not good just for the plants, but also for his hydration, because I have found that the misting system is the best way to hydrate carpet pythons. They always drink every single time it comes on. So that is my primary way of hydration. You can see this plant back here. I actually found the label for it, and it is called a bridal veil. It's doing really, really well. It's grown quite tall, and I don't know if that's a normal thing for this plant. I don't know much about it, or if it's just because of the lighting. But as you can see here, it's even trying to put out flowers. So that's a really, really cool plant, and I might try putting some more in, because clearly it doesn't mind the lower moisture levels. But I definitely need to get better at watering this enclosure, and spraying it down, especially for his hydration, more than anything else. But yeah, unfortunate. The other one that has survived is that little weed that we put in that has vined up. That's survived, and is still doing quite good. But yeah, the creeping fig, it's still holding on just, but the club moss in particular has definitely died right off, and I don't know that it will be capable of bouncing back. You can see him up here. This is his favorite spot, which is pretty interesting with how many spots there are to hide that he has just chosen with the visual barrier. But yeah, it's all looking pretty good. You can see back here that he has also shed recently. I fed them all on the same night. So that's a pretty full shed. So he's not dehydrated by a long shot. Being that it's a complete shed, it's a good indicator that he is still hydrated. But yeah, unfortunately, the automatic misting system is definitely, in my opinion, the way to go. But this enclosure was a bit of an experiment, obviously. So we will see. I do have a plan to bring out a new type of enclosure. I need to build some prototypes for it that will be specifically designed at live planning, with better drainage systems, lighting positions, misting systems, a lot of different things. But yeah, we need to build some prototypes, which will probably be his next enclosure, as well as the one that is going to replace the Reptile 1 enclosure that I mentioned earlier in the video, annoying me due to the gaps. But all in all, they're all doing quite well. other than our little mantis being MIA. All of the enclosures are good, so thank you for watching, and I will see you on next week's video.